David Lawson wasn't your average farmer. Raised in a small rural town, he inherited his family farm and turned it into a thriving business through sheer grit and vision. But David had bigger dreams. He wanted to break free from the limitations of land and soil. He wanted to fly, literally. For years, he worked toward purchasing a private jet, not as a luxury, but as a tool to expand his business, reach new markets, and change how farming was done. David's dream was about progress, opportunity, and proving that with hard work, nothing was out of reach. David Lawson's story is far from ordinary. Born and raised in a small rural town, he inherited his family's modest farm, a place rooted in tradition and hard work. And through relentless determination, visionary thinking, and an unwavering commitment to growth, he transformed this inherited land into a flourishing enterprise that not only sustained his family, but became a beacon of success and innovation within his community. While many saw farming as a profession limited by geography and circumstance, David dreamed beyond the physical boundaries of soil and crops. His aspirations soared skyward as he envisioned breaking free from the constraints that had long defined his livelihood, imagining a future where distance and time would no longer limit his reach. For years, he devoted himself to the monumental goal of purchasing a private jet, not as a symbol of opulence or status, but as a critical business asset that would revolutionize how he conducted his farming operations, allowing him to access new markets swiftly, forge strategic partnerships, and introduce groundbreaking techniques by bridging vast distances with unprecedented speed and efficiency. David's ambition was fueled by a deep desire for progress, a hunger for opportunity, and a steadfast belief that through relentless hard work and visionary planning, even the loftiest dreams could be transformed into tangible realities, proving that success was not a matter of circumstance, but of perseverance and bold action. After years of saving and planning, David finally decided it was time. He contacted a reputable private jet dealership known for serving high-profile clients. Excited and confident, he prepared all necessary documents and financing, ready to make the purchase that would change his life. He imagined the thrill of stepping onto that jet, the pride of his achievement, and the new possibilities opening up before him. But this excitement was about to meet a harsh reality. After years of relentless saving, meticulous planning, and unwavering focus on his dream, David reached a pivotal moment where all his efforts seemed poised to pay off. And with a sense of excitement and confidence that only comes from knowing you're on the cusp of a transformative achievement, he reached out to a well-known and reputable private jet dealership, renowned for catering to an elite clientele and handling high-profile transactions with professionalism and discretion. Equipped with every necessary document, from financing approvals to legal clearances, David was fully prepared to make the purchase that he had envisioned for so long. A purchase that symbolized not just personal success, but a new chapter of opportunity and innovation for his farming enterprise. In his mind's eye, he pictured the exhilarating moment he would step aboard the sleek aircraft, feeling the tangible proof of his hard work and determination, ready to embark on journeys that would expand his business horizons and change the way he connected with markets and suppliers. Yet, as he walked into the dealership, ready to finalize what should have been a straightforward business transaction, David's soaring excitement was abruptly tempered by a stark and unwelcome reality. A reality marked not by celebration, but by subtle, and sometimes blatant, resistance that would challenge him in ways he hadn't anticipated, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test not just his resolve, but the very principles of fairness and respect in a world where prejudice often lurks beneath the surface. When David arrived at the dealership, he was greeted with cold stares and whispered conversations. The salespeople seemed reluctant to assist him, asking unnecessary questions about his background and how he could afford such a purchase. Despite presenting all the required paperwork and financing, David was met with skepticism and subtle but clear signs of bias. The dealership's manager even suggested he consider other options, implying his presence was unwelcome. David felt the sting of discrimination, not because of anything he had done, but because of his race. When David arrived at the dealership, the atmosphere was immediately different from what he had expected. Instead of the warm welcome reserved for clients on the brink of making life-changing purchases, he was met with cold stares and hushed conversations that seemed to halt as he approached, creating an unspoken but palpable barrier. The sales staff, who normally would have guided a buyer through the exciting process, appeared hesitant and reluctant to engage, peppering David with intrusive and unnecessary questions about his background, his financial standing, and even his intentions, as if doubting the legitimacy of his presence simply because he didn't fit the typical profile of their clientele. Despite David providing every piece of required documentation, from proof of funds to credit approvals, the skepticism lingered, and subtle cues of bias became increasingly evident. The way he was watched, the cautious tone in which responses were given, and the deliberate avoidance of offering him the usual courtesy and enthusiasm. The situation culminated when the dealership's manager, rather than welcoming David as a valued potential buyer, suggested he consider other options, a thinly veiled message that his business was not wanted there, a rejection not based on merit or capability, but solely on race. The sting of this discrimination hit David hard. It was not a reflection of his qualifications or character, but an unjust judgment cast upon him for the color of his skin, reminding him that no matter his achievements or aspirations, bias and prejudice still cast shadows in spaces where they had no place. David refused to be discouraged. He knew this was more than a business transaction. It was a test of his resilience and dignity. Determined to break through the invisible barrier, he documented every interaction meticulously. He reached out to trusted lawyers and advocates, preparing to challenge the discrimination head-on. David's fight was no longer just about buying a jet. It was about standing up against injustice and demanding the respect every person deserves. David refused to let the cold reception and subtle discrimination deter him from his goal, understanding deeply that this was far more than a mere business transaction. It was a profound test of his resilience, dignity, and determination to claim his rightful place in spaces historically closed off to people like him. Recognizing the invisible barrier he faced was rooted in systemic bias. He meticulously documented every interaction, every evasive answer, and every dismissive gesture, knowing that evidence would be crucial in confronting the injustice. Seeking strength and guidance, David reached out to trusted lawyers and civil rights advocates who shared his commitment to fairness and equality, preparing to challenge the discriminatory treatment, not just to secure the purchase of his jet, but to set a precedent against such biased practices. His fight transcended personal ambition. It became a broader stand against inequality, a demand for respect, and a call to recognize the humanity and rights of every individual regardless of race. David's unwavering spirit and strategic approach transformed what could have been a disheartening experience into a powerful act of defiance and hope, inspiring others facing similar barriers to speak out and persevere in pursuit of justice. Just when the situation seemed hopeless, a surprising turn of events unfolded. One of the senior executives at the dealership, previously unaware of the discrimination occurring on his watch, stepped in after hearing about David's experience. Recognizing the gravity of the issue, he launched an internal investigation and publicly apologized to David. This executive promised to ensure the dealership would change its policies and culture to prevent future discrimination. David's fight had attracted unexpected allies, and the tide began to turn. Just when the weight of the situation threatened to overwhelm David and hope seemed to slip away, an unexpected and pivotal twist changed the course of his battle. A senior executive from the dealership, who had been previously unaware of the discriminatory behavior occurring within his own establishment, became aware of David's troubling experience through reports that reached his office. Realizing the seriousness and potential damage such discrimination posed, not only to David personally, but to the dealership's reputation and ethical standing, the executive took immediate action by launching a thorough internal investigation aimed at uncovering the truth and addressing systemic issues. Publicly acknowledging the wrongdoing, the executive offered a sincere apology to David, affirming that such behavior was unacceptable and would not be tolerated. He further pledged to overhaul the dealership's policies and work toward cultivating a culture of inclusivity and respect, ensuring that no other customer would face the kind of bias David endured. This intervention by a high-ranking figure brought much-needed validation to David's struggle, signaling that his perseverance had not gone unnoticed and that meaningful change was on the horizon. With new allies advocating for justice alongside him, the momentum shifted, and the tide began to turn in favor of fairness and accountability, transforming David's fight from a lonely battle into a shared mission for reform. With the dealership's support, David's purchase moved forward. But more importantly, his story became a beacon of hope and a call for accountability in luxury markets. David chose to share his journey publicly, using social media and interviews to shed light on the subtle racism that often goes unnoticed in business dealings. His courage inspired others who had faced similar barriers to speak out and demand change. David turned his pain into power, transforming a personal struggle into a movement for justice. With the dealership's backing finally secured, David's purchase proceeded smoothly, marking a significant victory not only for him personally, but symbolizing a broader breakthrough in confronting discrimination within luxury markets that often operate behind closed doors. Recognizing the power of his story beyond the transaction itself, David made the deliberate and courageous choice to share his journey publicly through social media, platforms, interviews, and community forums, shedding much-needed light on the subtle, often overlooked forms of racism that persist in high-end business dealings and affluent industries. His openness and willingness to speak truth to power resonated deeply with many who had experienced similar obstacles but lacked the platform or voice to confront them. Through his transparency and advocacy, David inspired others to break their silence, encouraging them to stand up against injustice and demand accountability in their own spheres. What began as a deeply personal struggle against bias and exclusion evolved into a powerful movement for change, as David transformed his pain into purpose and mobilized a community committed to challenging systemic inequities, reminding the world that no one should be marginalized or denied opportunity because of race, and that collective courage can drive meaningful reform. David's community rallied behind him. Local leaders, fellow business owners, and everyday citizens showed overwhelming support, praising his perseverance and leadership. Fundraisers, social media campaigns, and public forums were organized to amplify his message. The community's backing not only lifted David's spirits, but also pressured other dealerships and businesses to reevaluate their practices and commit to fair treatment for all clients. David's community quickly rallied around him with an outpouring of support that transcended typical neighborhood solidarity. Local leaders recognized his fight as a reflection of broader systemic issues and praised his resilience and leadership. Fellow business owners voiced their admiration for his courage, and everyday citizens joined in, united by a shared commitment to justice and equality. This groundswell of backing manifested in a variety of impactful ways. Fundraisers were organized to support David's cause and advocacy efforts. Social media campaigns spread his story far beyond the immediate area, and public forums provided spaces for open dialogue about discrimination in business and the importance of inclusive practices. This collective action not only buoyed David's morale during a challenging time, but also created meaningful pressure on other dealerships and businesses in the region to critically reevaluate their own policies and behaviors, sparking a commitment across the market to embrace fairness and ensure that all clients receive equitable treatment regardless of their background. The community's unified voice demonstrated the powerful role that grassroots support can play in driving social change, reinforcing the idea that when people stand together, even deeply ingrained problems can be challenged and dismantled. Owning. The private jet opened new doors for David's farming business. He expanded operations, established new partnerships, and pioneered innovative approaches by leveraging faster travel to access markets and resources. His success story became a testament to how breaking down racial barriers not only benefits individuals, but also drives economic growth and innovation. David's journey inspired other entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities to pursue their dreams fearlessly. Owning the private jet transformed David's farming business in profound ways, acting as a powerful catalyst that opened previously inaccessible doors and allowed him to expand operations far beyond what he had imagined possible. With the ability to travel swiftly and efficiently, David established new partnerships with suppliers, distributors, and innovators across distant markets, leveraging this mobility to pioneer cutting-edge farming techniques and optimize resource management that would have been impossible within the constraints of traditional travel. His success story quickly became more than a personal achievement. It emerged as a powerful testament to how dismantling racial barriers not only uplifts individual lives, but also fuels broader economic growth and innovation by empowering diverse voices and ideas to enter and thrive in competitive industries. As news of David's journey spread, it inspired a wave of entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities, emboldening them to pursue their ambitions with renewed confidence and determination, challenging long-standing inequities and proving that with vision, resilience, and access to opportunity, there are no limits to what can be achieved. David's story sparked broader conversations about systemic racism in high-end markets and industries traditionally closed off to minorities. Media outlets covered his experience, and advocacy groups used it to push for stronger anti-discrimination laws and corporate accountability. The private jet industry, luxury dealerships, and other exclusive sectors began implementing diversity training and revising customer service protocols, aiming to create more inclusive environments. David's story ignited widespread conversations that went far beyond his personal experience, shedding light on the pervasive issue of systemic racism embedded within high-end markets and exclusive industries that had long been perceived as inaccessible or unwelcoming to minorities. Media outlets eagerly covered his journey, broadcasting it to a national audience and sparking public discourse on the subtle yet deeply entrenched forms of discrimination that often go unnoticed in luxury sectors. Advocacy groups seized upon David's narrative as a rallying point to intensify their campaigns for stronger anti-discrimination legislation and greater corporate accountability, pushing policymakers and business leaders alike to acknowledge and address these inequities. In response to the mounting pressure and increased scrutiny, the private jet industry, luxury dealerships, and other elite markets began to take tangible steps toward reform, implementing comprehensive diversity and inclusion training programs designed to educate employees at all levels about implicit bias and equitable customer service. These sectors also revisited and revised their customer engagement protocols, striving to create welcoming and inclusive environments where every client, regardless of race or background, could expect respect and fairness. David's experience thus became a powerful catalyst for systemic change, demonstrating that exposing injustice can compel entire industries to reflect, reform, and commit to building a more just and equitable future. David Lawson's journey teaches us that no matter how daunting the obstacles, standing firm with dignity and courage can change lives, not just your own, but those of entire communities. His story reminds us that progress is possible, but it requires persistence, allies, and a refusal to accept injustice silently. For viewers, David's experience is a powerful call to action, to recognize bias, challenge it boldly, and support those fighting for equality. His dream of flying higher became a symbol of hope and transformation, inspiring all to reach beyond the limits imposed by prejudice. David Lawson's journey stands as a profound lesson that no matter how daunting and entrenched the obstacles may seem, maintaining steadfast dignity and unwavering courage has the power not only to transform one's own life, but also to uplift and inspire entire communities facing similar struggles. His experience underscores that progress, while challenging, is indeed achievable, yet it demands relentless persistence, the support of allies, and an unyielding refusal to accept injustice or discrimination in silence. For viewers, David's story serves as a compelling call to action, an urgent reminder to identify and confront bias wherever it exists, to challenge it with boldness and integrity, and to stand in solidarity with those who tirelessly fight for equality and fairness. In all spheres of life, his dream of soaring higher, symbolized by the acquisition of his private jet, transcended mere material success and became an emblem of hope, resilience, and transformative change, inspiring individuals everywhere to push beyond the arbitrary limits imposed by prejudice and to pursue their fullest potential with courage and conviction.